Hello, everyone. We will be starting shortly, just giving the opportunity for more participants to join us. So a few more seconds. I can see already the chat being, having messages. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think we should begin. As always, also today, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Before we commence, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we work and live. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. As a language professional, I recognize that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are the original communicators and storytellers of this land. I honor the enduring strength and diversity of First Nations languages, the First Nations of this continent, the first languages as well of this continent. Also, the role they play in maintaining culture, identity, and connection across generations. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Despina Amanatidu, and I'm a language professional and NATI certified interpreter and translator, a tutor of interpreting and trainer. I come to you today as the head of the interpreting department of 2M Language Services, and I have the privilege of co-leading the Interpreter Employment Success Program. But more of that in just a little while. I'd like to introduce you to our facilitator for today, for today's induction webinar, and it is Adam Selwood, who is an Australian entrepreneur and managing director and chief technology officer of cybersecurity startup Sinch. A technology leader with extensive experience in the design, delivery, and operation of cyber solutions across organizations of all sizes. Adam is passionate about using his expertise to help businesses become cyber fit. With a background in security architecture and analysis, Adam co-founded Sinch in 2017 to empower, educate, and support cybersecurity for small businesses. Inspired by physical fitness concepts, the Sinch Cyber Fitness platform generates tailored cyber fitness programs for business owners and teams, providing them with everything they need to manage and reduce the risk of online attacks without requiring any technical expertise. So very, very interesting. And as always, welcome, Adam. We have today with us Auslan interpretation provided by Auslan interpreter Donna Lista. So let's make a conscious effort, all the speakers, to keep an appropriate pace for Donna to render accurately. So for the participants, once again, we have the option of putting our questions or comments in the chat or the Q&A function of Zoom. We might be able to address them throughout the presentation, but if not throughout, definitely at the end, there's going to be dedicated time to question and answers and general discussion of the topics that we will be hearing Adam presenting. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Adam. Thank you very much. And we're all ears, I would say, to find out how to stay savvy and to stay safe.
Thank you, Despina. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Looking forward to the next hour or so, taking you through cybersecurity and how to approach, as an interpreter, stay safe when you're on the internet and on your computers. We're going to cover a lot. I will try to take a bit of go slowly through it. If anyone has any questions, as Despina noted, please put them into the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that and respond to it as we go if it makes sense. Otherwise, I'll pick it up at the end as well. I'll just give you a bit more background on myself shortly. Then we'll get into the session. We'll talk about how to secure your workspace and the things that you're using. We'll cover off how to do interpretation safely in the digital age and what to think about there. We'll touch on AI, which is a new thing that many of you are probably working with. And we'll also talk about just staying safe on the internet. And as you're doing those things, talk a little bit about the information that you're gathering and how to keep that safe and the footprint that you're leaving behind. And then we'll wrap up with some suggestions on where to go for more information and some quick little checklist. And as Despina said, lots of time for questions at the end. And hopefully you'll see a few answers in the Q&A as well if you've got anything that pops up throughout. So you might see the team jump on those before I get to them. So Despina's already covered a lot of this. I've been working in technology for about 20 years. I originally started Cinch back in 2017. And since then, we've been fortunate to support over 2,000 Australian businesses. As I mentioned, my focus is on what we call cyber fitness. It's about approaching cybersecurity or staying safe with your computers and online, more like your physical fitness, taking small steps over time and then building that up to hopefully reduce the risks of an attack or something serious happening. So that's enough about me. So let's dig into a little bit about how to approach securing your devices. These are your computers and your phones, thinking about how to communicate safely, and then also being mindful of the environment that you're working in and some of the cyber considerations or the technology risks that come with that. So starting with your devices, there's a number of things that you can do to keep your devices safe. And these are what I would recommend as something to start with. These are things that you should be thinking about making sure are in place on your computers. That could be your laptop, it could be your mobile phone, it could be a desktop if it's something that's at home, or even a tablet. First of all, something that many of us do when we first get our computers is that you might be set up as an administrator. This is something that gives you a lot of ability to install applications and do pretty much anything you want. That is dangerous to use on a daily basis. So if possible, you might want to look into removing your ability to install applications without having to go through a few extra steps, like having another password, or clicking some buttons and approving things. So wherever possible, you want to avoid running as an administrator on your computer. Really importantly is that every month, or more often as well, at least once a month though, your computer, be it your phone or your laptop, will have something that needs to be updated on it. So this will be a fix for often some sort of a security hole or a gap, some problem that's emerged that could be used to cause an incident or to disrupt your computer. And so one of the things to be really mindful of is at least once a month, you should make sure that you are installing updates. And this is for Windows or for Apple devices. or for even for your Android phones. These are things that you should be updating regularly, really looking to see. Wherever possible, you'd actually want to set them to automatically update. Unless you have a good reason, it's always a good idea to update your software as soon as there is an update available. That will make sure that you're staying secure throughout and forever. Another really important step beyond just updating is to make sure that your device has a password set up on it. So again, nowadays, a lot of times you will have to put a password in to log in. But if you don't, it is something that you should set. And ideally, you should look to not just have a password to log in with, but also, depending on your device, you might be able to unlock it with a fingerprint or your face, or potentially on a Windows computer, it might be using a PIN, so entering in a number to unlock your computer. So these are all really good features that make sure, and some of the things we'll talk about later, assume that you have this set up. So if you don't already have to enter a password to unlock or get into your computer, that's a really fundamental and important first step. Once you're in your computer, there's a few other things that you might want to think about. So firstly, making sure that you have antivirus. So this is a little piece of software that's a security software. If, for instance, you're using an Apple device, they don't come with that by default. You might want to look into that. Certainly, if you're using Windows, you should definitely be using something, and something that comes with your computer, which is the Microsoft antivirus, is a good starting point. Making sure that that's turned on and running is a really important thing. And increasingly, as we're using the internet for a lot of stuff that we do, it's also important in your web browser, you might look at an ad blocker. So this is a piece of software you can put into your web browser, and it will block any dangerous advertisements that might pop up while you're browsing. And then the last thing on your devices, which again is something that is increasingly on by default, but it's something to check is actually there, is what's called encryption. So what this is you go into your computer and it will scramble your hard drive information unless you've logged into it. So it will go in, mess all the stuff up, and then when you log in, it will unmess it, make it all sensible again so that you can work with it. It is an option that you can just turn on for pretty much any of your computers nowadays. And it doesn't really make any impact for when you're using it. But what that does is when you're not using it and the computer is locked or turned off, no one can go in. If someone gets to that, they can't just go and read what's on it. They have to actually have your password or your face or your fingerprint. So these are just some good things to check on all of your devices. Again, whether it's a laptop or a mobile phone or anything else. When we think about passwords, so these are, again, we spoke about the one for your computer, but also we use passwords everywhere. So we use this online, when we're logging into our email, when we're logging into the 2M platform, when you're potentially logging into Zoom, there's passwords everywhere. Something that makes a password strong, there's three things that we need to think about. First of all, you should make sure that your passwords are as long as you can handle. So the longer, the better. It could be if you just got 6 numbers and letters or something, that's not very long. If you can go for 30 numbers or letters or characters, that's much better. So the longer you can make your password, the better. You should also make sure that your passwords are unique. So don't use the same password in different places. So try to use a different password on your email than you do on your computer, than you do when you're logging into Facebook. It's really important that they're unique. If they're not unique, it could be that if someone steals your password from one of the other places or learns it, then all of a sudden everything has been unlocked and has been compromised. So you want to make sure that it's unique to the system that you're logging into. And lastly, this is difficult or can be difficult. The password should be difficult or hard to guess as well. So don't use your favorite catchphrase. Don't use your pet's name or your children's dates of births if you can avoid it. Try to make it hard to guess. Now, putting in strong passwords that are long and unique and hard to guess everywhere is very difficult, and it gets very hard to manage the more of these services that we use. So this is something where a password manager can be quite useful. We can talk about that in the Q&A section if people would like to know more about that. And really, really importantly, don't just rely on passwords themselves, because they do get learnt or get compromised. So it's really important to turn on what's called multi-factor authentication. So this is where you log in, you might have to enter your password, but then you'll also have to give it an extra code from your phone. Maybe there's a text message that was sent to you, or maybe you need to go into your email and click on a link or copy a number out of there. Or perhaps there's like a little device or something that you need as well. So wherever possible, also look for that multi-factor authentication. And there's lots of options for that nowadays. Really, really powerful. And that does mean that if for some reason your password is no longer secure or strong, they would also need to be able to have access to your phone or your email or something else to get into an account as well. So yeah, strong passwords everywhere, those three things that we spoke about. And wherever possible, make sure that you turn on and use multi-factor authentication. And we'll have a think about, we're using the internet, potentially we're communicating over networks. So this is, when you connect to the Wi-Fi, or you might plug into a cable, or you might just even be using your phone when you're out and about. So some things to be mindful of whenever you're connecting to the internet and communicating with people from a computer. First of all, just like with the encryption that I spoke about before, your device or your computer will have what's called a firewall. So this is something that you can turn on or off. And what you want to do is make sure that that's enabled. And there's really, again, not a lot of reason for that not to be turned on nowadays. Most things can work with a firewall quite easily. But it is very important to make sure that your computer has its firewall turned on wherever possible. Another thing that we want to think about is, we spoke about having a password to log into your computer. Really, that's only going to work if you also lock your computer when you're not using it. So while you're out and about, if you're in a location which isn't at home or isn't secured in and of itself, like behind a locked door, you want to make sure that you're locking your screen when you're not using your computer. So this is for your phone and your laptop, primarily for anything that's sort of mobile in particular. When you walk away, for whatever reason you need to walk away from your device, it's a really good idea to lock your screen. Now, there's lots of shortcuts on keyboards for that. Sometimes just closing the screen could do it. There's various options that you can do to make sure that your screen is locked when you're not at it. Now, the reason for that is if you don't lock your screen and you don't have a password to get into it, anyone can walk up and just get onto your computer and do whatever they like. So we want to protect against that type of thing. We also want to be aware of and thinking about the network that we're connecting to the internet on. So again, if you're at a cafe or you're at an airport or you're at an office that's not your own, you really need to think about whether or not you trust this network that you're connecting to. So ways that you can be a little bit more confident and trust the network. Firstly, public Wi-Fi sometimes doesn't have a password that you need to enter, which means that anyone can get onto it. So networks and Wi-Fi that have passwords are usually slightly more secure than other ones. If it's public and anyone can get into it as well, it's pretty easy to connect to. You may or may not really trust or be comfortable with other things that are connected to that network. So think about what else might be on that network. And that also means who's running that network, so who's in control of that network, thinking about that. And as well as that is, just like your computer, networks need to be updated regularly as well. And so this one might actually apply at home. You might actually want to think about updating your home network. If you haven't, since you connected it up to the internet potentially years ago, you might want to look in to see if there's any security updates that can be installed on that, because that can help you to have trust on it. If you're going into an office or into a public facility where there's a secure network that they give you access to, Chances are that that's being updated and is pretty well secured. But just ask yourself before you connect to a network whether or not that's something that you trust. If you don't trust it, you might find that a better option is to connect to the internet using your phone, as an example. We can be pretty confident that that's going to work, and it's something that you control and that you should know about. So yeah, potentially consider just using your phone to get onto the internet as opposed to using, say, a cafe Wi-Fi if you don't trust it, especially if you're doing anything sensitive. If you just want to watch some YouTube videos, maybe you don't need to worry about it too much. But if you're doing banking or, really importantly, client work, it's super important to think about the network that you're connecting to. And one last little tip on this one is to think about enabling what's called Find My Device. So if you've got an iPhone, it will be Find My iPhone. If you've got a Windows machine, it's Find My Windows, Find My Device. If you've got an Android device, it's Find My Android phone, I think. All of these things can be enabled. And the reason that we want to enable them is because if for some reason you do leave your laptop somewhere or your phone, you can first of all find it. You can go into a service, into your iCloud account for Apple, as an example. You can locate where it is. And really importantly, you can also remotely lock your device and potentially even delete what's on there. So it's a really important way, particularly if you're out and about and you're communicating in mobile places or remotely, turning in Find My Device on is a really worthwhile thing to do for yourself. If you've ever lost a phone, I know I have. If you've ever lost a child, I know I have. Putting these Find My Device things on is a really useful way for you to find those sorts of things. And if you weren't aware, you can do this on your laptops as well. It's really powerful. Let's talk about the sorts of scam messages and dangerous emails and communications that you might encounter. Here's a couple of examples to have a look at and think through. Now, these are email examples, but the same sorts of principles and things to think about also apply in, say, social media or anywhere that you might be communicating, even text messages and the like. So the first thing to think about with any message that you get to determine whether or not this is dangerous or something that you should be wary of is looking at who the message came from. So don't just assume that this is actually from the tax office in the first example here. You actually want to look at the email address that it was sent from. This one, for example, looks a little bit like it might have come from the tax office, but it actually didn't. It's a made-up email address. So you want to be looking at that. If it's come from someone, some random Gmail account, that's also something to be mindful of. You might see all sorts of these things. They can come from anywhere, but don't just assume because it's come from a trusted email address that it's not dangerous as well, because there are other things that you might need to be mindful of. Used to be that we would just worry about the words and the grammar, and poorly worded or bad images and things was enough to give a bit of a clue that this is a dangerous scam message. Nowadays, that's less useful. People are using all sorts of things like AI and other tools, and they're getting a lot better at translating and doing things. So you can't really trust the content, but can still be a little bit of a clue if it's strangely worded, particularly if it doesn't read like something from the tax office. Maybe that's a bit of a hint that this is a dangerous message. More things to worry about. If you see something that has a link, so you need to click on something to open and it'll take you somewhere else, or if there's an attachment, so it could be a file that's attached to the message. These are things to be very wary of. So it's very important not to click on a link or open an attachment until you're very confident that this message is a legitimate or a trustworthy message. Really make sure that you are aware of these things and you're confident in anything before you click a link or open up an attachment, because ultimately that is the thing that's going to cause a problem for you. This will infect your computer, or it might run something or steal your password or any number of things off the back of that. And lastly, one thing that you will see very regularly in these types of messages is that they will come with some sort of urgency. So as you'll see in both of these examples, they threaten you with it needs to be done today, or this sounds like something that's quite shocking, or it could be any number of different things, but they want to create a bit of urgency. They want to try to get you to panic and do things without thinking. So it's really important with dangerous messages. Double check the sender details. Watch out for any content errors, something that feels a bit strange. Take care with any links or attachments. And then really important is to slow down and really think and be careful if someone is pushing or trying to make you do something urgently. And again, just a reminder, these also appear in, say, messaging apps and social media. Sometimes we get things that are urgent and look a bit dodgy or dangerous. That's okay. Like, these things do occur as well. But just slow down and take a stop, take a breath before you go too far into it. Let's have just a little bit more on the physical environment that you're working in, particularly when you're doing interpreting and or where you're preparing for or doing things around interpreting. So really importantly, it's to think about where a lot of the conversations or the interpreting that you're doing will be potentially confidential, and you really are obligated to think about that. We'll touch on that in a minute. But even just preparing for an engagement or doing something may have you working on things or around the interpreting engagement in a space that's maybe public. So one thing just to avoid is anytime you're doing anything confidential, try not to do it in a public space. So don't do interpreting from a cafe, as an example. Don't open up or look at confidential material on your devices from an airport if you can avoid it. Really important to be aware of and take note of your surroundings. So think about where you are, think about what you're doing. And if you are doing something confidential, you might want to relocate to a different place to do that. Make sure that your devices are with you at all times. So don't leave them on the table at the cafe. Don't leave them at the check-in counter at the airport. All of these types of things. Just be aware and try to keep those things with you. If you can, when you are doing interpreting or doing anything confidential, make sure that you close the door. Can be a little bit, I'm in a room here at home. I close the door. That just signals to people that this is something sensitive or that you shouldn't be interrupted. And hopefully people aren't listening on the other side of it. But just give yourself that space. That way people can't see what's on your screen and whatnot. And as I mentioned before, if for some reason you do need to step away or you're not using your computer, it's really useful and helpful to lock your screen when it's not used. Just a bit of a scenario or something to think through. Imagine, for instance, you were going to an engagement, you're preparing for that, and you happen to stop at a cafe before you actually go and see the client or meet with the client. You're opening up and just preparing and rereading through the notes or the materials that have been shared with you, and you lose track of time and you panic a little bit. And so you rush off and you pay for the coffee and you run out the door and go to the engagement. In the rush and the panic, you leave your computer behind at the table that you were sitting at, and someone comes along, picks that up and has access to that. Now, if you were in the habit of locking your screen, keeping your device with you, potentially not doing things at the cafe in the first instance, the chances of that occurring and potentially, everything on your laptop being compromised is pretty low. But if you're not in those habits and you're not thinking about these things regularly, you might actually find that sort of a scenario could happen, and it could be quite dramatic for you. The other thing, and to Cecil's question here, so Cecil's talking about the Find My Device feature. Will it have GPS coordinates on the phone? If the phone is lost in the bush, for example, what's the accuracy range? So this is this scenario where you've left your laptop behind. It really does depend on the way that it works. It usually works off connecting from the network that you were connected with at the time. With Apple devices, it will actually poll from other Apple devices around you to try to pinpoint it. It's not always GPS, but it can actually pinpoint it to the location. Really, the important thing is you'll see where it was last connected to the internet, because where it was last seen. Doesn't guarantee that it's still there, but it gives you a place to start. And really importantly, with the Find My Device feature, you can remotely lock it or shut it down and do other things as well as soon as it's connected to the internet. So again, if your device is encrypted and you've locked it, even if someone walks off with it, the moment they connect it into the internet, it'll tell you where it is and it will shut it down so that they can't actually do anything with it. So it's quite useful. In the house, it's a little bit more useful. Sometimes it can be more accurate, but it's usually within sort of 10 to 50 meters. It's probably a good base. So that's sort of the device and where you're working. Let's talk a little bit more about when you're actually practicing interpreting and the systems and whatnot that you're using. So firstly, this is an opportunity to remind you that there's a code of ethics that applies, and this also applies onto your computers and when you're doing things digitally. So you do have an obligation to maintain the confidentiality of an engagement and also not to disclose information about the work that you're doing. There's likely to be a lot of information that you're collecting, either in preparing or just stuff that you happen to collect or capture as part of working with anyone. So it could be things such as the meeting details of where you're meeting, notes that you've taken either during or after or beforehand, the contact information of people who've been engaged, any emails, just in terms of preparing and setting things up, and any reference materials that they might have shared as well. So just because the interpreting is confidential doesn't mean that the things that go around the interpreting aren't also confidential, and we need to be thinking about ensuring that we're maintaining confidentiality and not disclosing information right the way through. So just take note of and think about the information you collect. Try to organize things that are happening and treat that as confidential as you're organizing. Keep it private at all times. So if you're unsure, just treat it as private. Don't share things or leave them out and in the open. Don't forget that it's also important to keep them confidential and private afterwards. So just because the interpreting has stopped doesn't mean that the information you've collected has disappeared. So if, for instance, you're worried about it or you don't want to worry about it being lost or the wrong people getting access to it, you might want to think about deleting some of this information when it's no longer needed for the engagement. One way of helping with this is to use trusted platforms when you're doing these types of things. So when you're doing interpreting, when you're preparing for any engagements, it's useful to use trusted systems and platforms for this. Many of these are going to be in the cloud. So platforms like 2M Lingo, well understood and can be trusted. And what is it about them that makes them trustworthy? So when they're in the internet or you're accessing them from your web browser, it's important to remember that while you can get to them from anywhere, from the cafe or from home, that does mean that an attacker or someone who wants to get access to things can also get to them from anywhere. So we don't want to just use any system. We want to have some trust in that system. The system should be reliable. So ideally, it's something that's going to be online all the time. And really the mature, the well understood, and the systems that are well known are more reliable and likely to stay online going forward. So it's good to look for something that's been around for a little while. They can have good support, which is really great for some of the bigger systems. But you may find that if you sign up and you just create an account with something and you start using it, the default setup or the way that you get it the first time when you log in is not necessarily the most secure setup. So what you should be looking for, and hopefully a lot of these systems do have a lot of security features. Some of them might happen by default just behind the scenes. But what you should do is you should look into and see if there's anything that you can turn on. So with your email, if you're using Gmail or other systems, there's lots of things you can turn on and enable to make that more secure. if you go looking for them. If you're using something to collect and store documents, the same thing. Is there ways that you can protect, stop it from sharing things, making it harder to share things? Really importantly, strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. You want to look for and make sure that those things are available, and turn them on if they aren't already turned on. And this applies sort of everywhere. So not just in the things that you use for interpreting, but it's really powerful and useful to do this in, say, Facebook or LinkedIn or any system that you use just generally for social media. If you see people whose accounts get taken over on, say, these types of platforms, usually that's because they didn't have a strong password or they weren't being mindful of what they were sharing. And so going in and turning some of these security features on can be quite useful, not just for interpreting, but even just protecting things in your normal life. And when you're looking at a new tool or a service, really look for, and just take a moment before you sign up for something, look for evidence that they've thought about security and they have certain things. So there are security certifications that companies can get. They should be able to make public statements around things. Don't just click on the terms or the privacy statements. Actually open them up and see if you can understand what they're talking about there, and make sure that it's going to be appropriate for whatever you're planning to do with them. That's a really important thing. Let's talk a little bit about AI. We're not going to get into whether or not you should be using AI. Suspect most of you are and will at some point if you're not already. But here's a few things to think about when you are considering or working with AI in your interpreting practices. So first of all, it is really important that confidentiality consideration. It's really important that you are careful with sharing anything that might be confidential with an AI platform. So if you're connecting it to your calendar, or you're sharing some of these materials that might have been shared in confidence with you, or your notes, be aware and be mindful that that is potentially sharing it with someone else. It's something to be thinking about. Also, don't assume that it's correct or accurate. So one of the other obligations you have as an interpreter is about impartiality and accuracy. These AI models haven't necessarily been trained to be as impartial as accurate as you are. So it's important to be mindful of that and be considerate of that if you're using AI in any sort of meaningful way. And whilst they might give you a bit of directional, get you in the right direction for something, don't trust it blindly. You should really be thinking about considering and checking that things are accurate before you actually start using them. Thinking about whether or not you should be sharing something with an AI for whatever purpose. One way that you can be a little bit more confident with it is to pay for it. So the free AI services like ChatGPT and other platforms, if you're not paying for them, they are, based on their terms, they can take whatever you give them and incorporate that into the AI. So by paying for it, there is a little bit of a protection from that occurring. Again, make sure and check that that is the case in anything that you do pay for. But if you would like to use it in a little bit more of a confidential way, sometimes paying for it is a good way to do that. So we should be wrapping by 6, so you should be okay. Also be mindful that as you're interacting with things on the internet, be it social media or just browsing around the internet, you're leaving behind digital footprints. Now, the reason that we want to share this is because these are the sorts of things that we don't normally think about. It's not something we want to be thinking about all the time. But whenever we do have a particularly sensitive engagement, or where there's something that could be potentially confidential that's happening, we do want to be mindful that we're not necessarily sharing that openly. So, for example, if you're working on something sensitive in a corporate environment, or there's potentially a legal undertaking that you're interpreting around, you wouldn't necessarily want to promote that you're going off to the court to do something on social media. It might be exciting and you might be excited for that. But if you were to promote that, you might be targeted, or it might share information publicly that really shouldn't be shared publicly. So do be aware of that. Same goes for if you're going and you're connecting into just even you going and connecting to a local cafe, might actually collect some sort of information that you were near the court that day, and might actually make a little bit of a target. So just be aware that anything that you're doing online, and even just connecting with a computer, can potentially be sensitive. We don't want to overwhelm or think about it too much. We need to use Wi-Fi. We need to use our computers. We should be sharing that we're doing things on social media and or LinkedIn or hiring sites, some of our experiences and whatnot. But just be cautious about what's out there and what you're sharing, and be mindful before you share things, particularly about specifics that you might be being engaged to do. So that's kind of what we really wanted to impart with you as part of this. As I said, there's a little bit of time for Q&A coming up. So if you've got to think about your questions and anything you'd like me to expand on. But before we get there, I just want to share a little bit of a checklist with you of what we've covered, as well as some places that you can go to get more information about any of these things and help if you need some help. So here's a quick summary of what we've covered. And I'll just step through this briefly. These are things to think about, quick little checklist for you to go through potentially on a regular basis. Again, as part of doing security, you don't necessarily need to do it all at once. Just pick one of these things or pick a few of these things and just work through them over time. Little steps ultimately will build up to something big. So start with just remembering that you are obligated and you must maintain confidentiality, not just in person, but also on the internet and on your computer. Digitally, we need to make sure that we are maintaining confidentiality. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on your devices. So this is where a lot of the information is held. Be careful with that. Don't leave them lying around. Be prepared for and on the lookout for dangerous messages. We probably have all received one on our phones or in our emails or something by now. So expect more of that, and be careful and cautious about what messages you're interacting with. Take note of your surroundings. So particularly when you're doing anything confidential, be it interpreting over Zoom, or whether or not you're just preparing for or working around things, be aware of what's going on around you before you start to engage with that. Make sure that you're working with trusted platforms and solutions, such as the 2M platform, or going through and using things that you're confident in that are well secured and mature. Be very careful with AI, particularly at the moment. Try not to use it too much for, or really at all, for confidential things, and don't trust it just out of the box. Don't overshare things. We might get excited and naturally want to be sharing, but try to be careful about what you're sharing, and again, make sure that you're mindful of any confidentiality that might be around that. And then about staying safe on your devices, limit the permissions. So if you can, remove your admin rights. This also goes for any of these cloud platforms that you might be using. If you can turn your permissions down a little bit if you're a business, that's very useful. Install updates automatically if you can. If not, check that they're updating regularly. Use antivirus and ad blocking on your web browser. If you're not already using those things, look for options to do that. Turning on encryption on your computers is really useful, particularly if that's going to be out and about. So if it's mobile, like a laptop or a phone, encryption's really, really important. And as is locking your screen. So making sure you're logging in with a password and that you'll lock screens before you do things. When you have a password set on something, make sure that they're strong. Again, they should be long and unique and hard to guess. Turn on multi-factor authentication everywhere, if you can, as many places as possible. Make sure that you're connecting and using trusted networks, not necessarily just public stuff out in the open. And wherever possible, if you're doing work, particularly if it's confidential, try to avoid doing that in a public environment. Get some privacy of some sort. If you have to do it publicly, again, just be aware of your surroundings and do your best to try to stay private and confidential in those things. Let me pick up quickly before I move on. Vivian's got a question here. Do most interpreting roles explain clearly the level of confidentiality for etc., who or how to report any suspicious or actual breaches of confidentiality? I might let one of the other team answer that. I'm not an interpreter myself, so I can't answer that. But my suggestion is, unless otherwise, you should really just assume that it is a confidential engagement. Now, in this instance, I think Donna can probably pretty confidently assume that this is less of a confidential engagement because it's in a public environment. But if you were doing something and you were unsure, I would encourage you to treat it as confidential. In terms of the engagement, Despina, was there anything that typically is included in an engagement?
So all engagements are confidential by default. So the information that comes to our possession during any interpreting assignment is not to be disclosed to anyone, including, family members or friends post assignment, unless it is mandated by law, unless we are required by law to disclose that information. So yes, and where to report actual breaches of confidentiality. Vivienne, do you refer to interpreters breaking confidentiality or, like,
If there was this cyber incident, for instance,
yes,
and someone stole your notes, yeah, again, it could be
yeah.
so sorry, Despina, you go.
No, you go. It's because this is the meaning. It's a cyber incident. So where to report it?
So usually if you have any sort of an incident, you should report it to the client. So you should report and say, notify them that the information may have been compromised. If again, the engagement that you have may clarify that. If not, you should let them know it is their information that's been compromised in that instance. There's also, depending on how serious you feel that it is, there are, and it's a very good purpose. So some of these websites here are the exact place that you should go off and report things. So I might run through these, and that might help to explain where to go if you need help or if there's something that does occur. So that would be great. So these are places where you can go and get trusted guidance on things and also go for help. So in that specific scenario, if you do have an incident, these services are out there to help you. These are general. These aren't specifically for interpreters, but they are very familiar with and deal with cyber incidents regularly. So they're a good place to start. So I'll run through these each step by step. So the first one here, the Australian Cyber Security Centre, ACSC. This is the Australian government's website about everything to do with cybersecurity. So you'll see down there, it's cyber.gov.au. There's a QR code there as well. Sorry, Donna, lots of spelling here for you. That is a great resource. It covers everything for the biggest large organizations right down to specific individuals across Australia. It's a really good resource for things. They also have a reporting tool there, and that is where you can and should go, particularly if you're a business. Go there and report through that website, and they will do their best to direct you to where to go for help. If you just want to do a little bit of training, learn a little bit more about cybersecurity, the Cyber Wardens program, again, cyberwardens.com.au. That's a free training. It's designed for small businesses, but it's very much built for individuals. So you can go on that free training, sign up for that. That's a really good free service. It'll help you learn a little bit more about dangerous emails, how to do things on websites, multi-factor authentication. It's a great place to go to learn a little bit more about some of the concepts that I've introduced you to today. And the last one here is IDCare, idcare.org. This is, again, a government-funded nonprofit. And this organization specializes in helping people with a cyber incident or an identity theft situation. And they're excellent. They are a call center, so you can call them up. They're counselors first. So if you do have an incident, I would really encourage you to contact ID Care in the first instance if you're unsure and a bit lost. An incident can be very overwhelming and quite emotional, and they are a great service that can really help you through that. And there's a lot of confidentiality wrapped up. So they're a very good trusted organization you could work with. Again, that really depends on the engagement though. Hopefully don't have too many of those examples, but I would encourage you to think about contacting your client if you do have an incident. But all three of these organizations and websites full of really great resources. I could spend and do spend a lot of time in all of these places. But again, if you're really unsure where to start and you do have an incident, I would start with ID Care. That would be my first place to go. The cyber.gov.au will probably point you there anyway. So yeah, it's probably the best place to start. And that's it for today, apart from Q&A, which I'll get to in a minute. Just in summary though, it is really important that you maintain the confidentiality, impartiality, and accuracy in your interpreting, not just physically and in person, but also when you're doing things digitally or on your computer. So very important to keep that in mind. A little bit of care when you're working online or when you're setting up and using computers will go a long way. It will make working online and with your computers just safe and secure generally. And don't feel that you need to do everything all at once. You can take your time with it. Just take it step by step. Do a little bit each day or once a week or every time you have a new engagement. And over time that will build up and you'll be what we call cyber fit. And hopefully that will help you long term and be confident and safe in everything that you do. Okay, and we'll go to Q&A, which I can see. So again, the more questions, the better. I'll try not to get too crazy with them. But Michael's got another one to start with. So how can these organizations help? Do they come and fix my computer for you? Great question, Michael. So those organizations, they won't physically do anything, but they will explain to you the steps that you need to take, and they can put you in contact with people who will be able to help you to fix your computer if you do have a problem with that. If it's a very serious situation, if, for instance, you're doing something in a diplomatic engagement or something of that nature, you might actually find that the government, the cyber.gov.au, is a legitimate, will maybe get a bit more involved and might get a little bit more hands-on. Sometimes they will go after the hacker, Michael, again, but it really does depend on the situation. ID Care, they do actually do investigations into cybercrime and whatnot, but they don't, it's called hacking back. They don't necessarily go after that, but they will report it to, say, federal police if it's serious enough. If it is legitimate cybercrime, they can report it through to the authorities. Again, these are the places to start, and they will help you to understand whether or not you can report it to people. If, for instance, let's say someone stole money, they might step you through reporting that to your bank. If it's, again, something a little bit more serious in a diplomatic engagement, they might help you to engage with federal police or other people who might be a little bit more interested in or in a position to help you with that type of stuff.
Perfect.
Great.
So can I ask quickly, Adam, a question? I don't think we have anything else other than compliments at this point in time on the chat.
I'll take it.
I was going to say, what are the most common incidents that can happen to individuals, not organizations? Because organizations, obviously, they avail of another level of security protection and certificates and, storage solutions, etc., etc. So they are a lot more difficult, perhaps, to hack, or to have cybersecurity incidents. But for individuals, for us as interpreters.
So for individuals, again, even just people, the things we see all the time. dangerous messages, a lot of stuff that we've covered. So you'll get scam texts, phone calls, lots of these things. These are cyber incidents. They're trying to attack you. They're trying to get you to do something that is dangerous. Either click on something, open something, share something with them, like a password. These are things that happen all the time. So lots of dangerous messages flying around. Other things that occur are people's accounts being taken over. So, if you don't have a strong password and multi-factor authentication, I mentioned, for instance, we've all seen people's Facebook accounts get taken over, as an example. That happens quite regularly, usually because you haven't strengthened the password or put multi-factor authentication on. That happens regularly. You would be surprised how regularly people leave their phones in places, forget about it, or a laptop, or something of that nature. So these are very common, very easy things to happen, which as an interpreter is a little bit more potentially damaging because of the sensitivity around some of these types of things. So they're very common as well. And just more generally, the messages and people taking over accounts, often what that's going to lead to is, say, a scam, some sort of a scam. So it might be that you get tricked into buying something on, say, Facebook Marketplace, and paying money for something that isn't real. Lots and lots of those types of things. That tends to be the types. There's lots of different scams. Again, there's a website, if anyone's interested in scams themselves, you can go to ScamWatch is a website that the Australian government, which collects information about what scams people are falling victims to. And there's, again, a lot of advice just generally about how to protect yourself from those things. Lots and lots of different scams out there.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam. So we had another question about the public liability, which is an insurance that, as a language service provider, Tuam Language Services has and is available to our interpreters collaborating with us. However, it doesn't cover cybersecurity incidents. We believe there is a specific cybersecurity insurance that deals with this kind of incident.
Yeah, so particularly if you're a business as well, you can get cyber insurance. And cyber insurance is extremely valuable for helping you in the event that you have an incident. So again, I referenced IDCare and cyber.gov.au. They're great services, they're free, but they are a little bit limited in what they can do. So back to Michael's point, if you did want to be able to call someone who can come in and help you to respond a little bit more better, if you had a business that you're running potentially, you might want to look at cyber insurance that will give you access to very capable professionals who do this for a living. So it's a very good capability. But yeah, typically individuals don't take out that sort of insurance. But yeah, as a business, you might want to consider doing that. It's a very cost-effective way. It is still expensive, but it is a cost-effective way of getting access to a very expensive service that you really want when you have a serious incident.
Thank you for that, Adam. That says a lot. And obviously, with any kind of insurance, there's always the notion of the individual being at fault, which is looked at should an incident occur. So that doesn't alleviate, the responsibility, I guess, we have to keep our data secure and the data of those that we service as well. I really did like the analogy, not analogy really, but the correlation of our code of ethics, the interpreting code of ethics, talking about accuracy, impartiality, and confidentiality, how that ties to our obligation to the data, not just to the people, the parties, but the data as well that come into our possession.
Excellent.
And also, thank you, Donna, as well from Vivienne, because it was a great practice for Auslan interpretation as well.
Special shout out to Donna. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Hopefully the pace was appropriate. Thank you, Adam, again. Very useful, very informative, and for those resources as well that we will go online and check. So hopefully participants took out a lot out of today's webinar, which has been recorded and will be made available on the ISP website and the resources as well. So thank you again, and thank you to our audience. We are going to let you go, and we'll see you at the next webinar, to which you're going to be invited beforehand again. Thank you and goodbye. Okay.